Morning, Sal. Morning.
Good morning. So we're kind of waiting for Adrian, who might be a couple of minutes late. I don't know. But she said she was dropping her daughter, but would be here.
Sal, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay, good. Well, let's call the meeting to order in that case. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll approve the agenda. We don't have the minutes, so we'll move that to next meeting. General business and appearances. So
Yeah,
anyone,
I've got comments, so.
okay, and who else is here? Sandra?
Sal,
Thought I
I
saw.
also just wanted to let you know the minutes are posted on the website. If you were to go to the agendas page and click on the meeting link for today, they should appear on the left-hand sidebar column.
Okay, yeah, great. So I'll make sure we distribute those so that next meeting we can handle those. Thanks, everyone.
No
And
problem. Thank
I
you.
see Holly here. Holly's here as well. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, Steve Whitaker from Montpelier. The developer submitted some significantly meritorious proposals, but they did so without knowing what's going to be built on the rest of the property. We don't have a master plan that fixes density in civic buildings, recreational uses, phasing, or final infrastructure layout. Because of that, no one can forecast traffic, and without forecasting traffic, then no one's going to get a permit. Traffic is not just for future residents, it includes construction traffic, and that includes hauling contaminated soils out and hauling clean soils in. It includes road construction, utility work, heavy equipment over multiple seasons. If we don't know whether the site will be fully cleaned or remain under long-term environmental controls, we can't know how much soil will move or how many truck trips that creates. That also means the traffic numbers in these proposals are built on assumptions, and those assumptions may be too low. The brownfield issues are also bigger than have been presented publicly. This is not just a former golf course. The level of cleanup will affect valuation, financing, construction costs, and long-term stigma. If we're contemplating tax increment financing, the increment depends on valuation. If valuation is affected by environmental conditions, that has consequences. That can be the Achilles heel of the whole project, be penciling out, so to speak. Selecting a developer and granting site control before resolving these issues puts the community at risk and also disadvantages the developers. They're competing based on incomplete information. That's not fair to them, and it's not protective of the public. No permits will issue until there's a binding master plan, and that defines a full build-out remediation standard, the traffic impact, including construction and infrastructure phasing. Otherwise, we're approving pieces without knowing the whole. And about executive session, Sal, you said you might go into executive session. At this stage, you have proposals, but you don't have a partner selected. There's no contract. There's no counterparty being negotiated. Simply discussing how you plan to evaluate proposals is deliberation that should be done in public. Executive session is not a tool for general evaluation and discussions. So I think that we should also consider that we may end up wanting multiple developers, because developers of the scale that have proposed here do have specialties that are different. A builder for a developer for our civic infrastructure and our multimodal path, which is probably the quickest contract that should be let, is different than a developer for, for connected multi-story tenancies. And similarly, tiny home construction or smaller homes, affordable homes, might be a different developer. So trying to put all this in one basket is not good for anybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Comments have been noted. Would anyone else care to comment? Holly.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to explain, my purpose in being here this morning. I did have an exchange with Sal to understand, the agenda and what you hope to accomplish. And Adrian, I don't know what time you got to your presentation last night at City Council, and I apologize. I wasn't there to see it. But I think that our committee, the Complete Streets Committee, is still very interested in understanding what the evaluation matrix is going to look like, what the criteria, how the criteria is going to be weighted, whether it's going to be comprehensive, and especially what specific role this subcommittee will place in the recommendations, opinions, and collaborations of other key committees. Because I think the explanation we received was that originally this subcommittee was very interested in collaborating with our committee, but it feels like the most recent explanation of our involvement is we can't really have specific committees involved because we don't know how to involve all committees equally. And I don't know that that has to be accommodated. So I'm here primarily on behalf of the Complete Streets Committee to continue to listen and learn. Hanif has to recuse himself because he's part of one of the proposals. But my purpose is to continue to be here and listen and look for ways to appeal to this subcommittee to include the Complete Streets Committee in its considerations. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. I think our discussion today will shed some light on those concerns. We do intend to solicit the input of several committees, if not all, including very much so the Complete Streets Committee. So hang in there. Anyone else? Okay, in that case, let's move to the general discussion.
Okay.
Stephanie.
Yeah, I just popped a request in to share my screen. So, all right, let me share kind of our points. So,
You're able to do it? Okay.
yeah, I got it. Yep. So it's a packed agenda here today because we need to make some good progress. This is a big meeting. It's our first chance to get together since receiving the proposals. There's a lot of process to discuss, as Holly just brought up, as well as talking about the scoring matrix, etc. So here's my proposed kind of run of show here this morning to talk through all the different points. So we have the timeline overview. I've added a couple of points that I want to make sure the subcommittee is all on the same page with and the public knows about, as well as talk about maybe another meeting of the subcommittee. Then talk about the review process, as we just talked about, city committee input, the financial analyst, and then the developer Q&As that need to happen over the next week. We'll talk about that. Then we'll get into the scoring matrix. And then we'll talk about the video as I'm working on that today. The community input session may be good to just go over, even though Adrienne covered that in her presentation last night. I thought it might be useful to talk a little bit more about some of the logistics, especially the facilitation. And then if we have time to discuss the proposals, and also that could allow for some time if needed to go into the executive session to talk about the financials that were provided by the developers and the confidential materials. And then we can tie up with other communications. Anybody have anything to add to this? I'm not sure there's room to add, but any changes? Okay. All right. So I'm going to start with the timeline. This is what's happened in the past. Oh, I missed this one. We had that meeting. So, and this is done. So we're now at the period where we're welcoming public feedback. Specifically, the feedback goes to the city councilors on this subcommittee. That is the process we've established, that you folks are the deciders. So getting you their input is the most important thing. And then running concurrently the independent financial analysis. So I see that the new manager is on, and Brian and I will be meeting with her on Monday to just introduce ourselves and make sure that she has some of the background that we have as a firm. And I know staff has already brought her up to speed on a lot of this. And then what we're doing is sending out on Monday a list of questions to the developers. So this will be the clarifying question stage. This is based on what was submitted, talking about clarifications about specifics within their proposal, as well as materials, sometimes information gaps, trying to get all the material so we have the best understanding to then do the review. And these may be questions that we've heard already from the public. These may be questions that are that will help us explain it better to the public. So that's going to go out on Monday with the expectation, I'm going to jump down to this March 9th, with the expectation that they respond to everything within a week, so that we have those clarifications. The target delivery for the financial analysis is March 13th. So a week from Friday, like 2 weeks, in 2 weeks from tomorrow, right? So,
Yeah.
So what I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but I want to clarify this Q&A period. What we've kind of come to at this stage is a 3-bucket approach. One bucket is clarifying questions to the developers. We're going to be we're soliciting this from this committee, the staff, getting these questions together from everybody who's reviewing these, and I'm going to separate them out into 3 buckets. One bucket is clarifying questions for the developers in the short term, things that we need to know to be able to understand their application better. Small clarifications like, are you saying this many units or that many units are multifamily versus townhouse, for example? Small clarifications, missing materials. Then there's another bucket of, actually, that's a more appropriate interview question. So I'll be going through and kind of sorting through the questions that come in to say, those are actually more appropriate to ask the developers in person and get a better sense and let them speak to it. And then the third bucket is actually homework. And that would be things that the city, by the city, I mean staff and us, White and Burke, can do to kind of give the subcommittee better understanding of what they're looking at and like the impacts that it might have within the city. So the ask, as I emailed each of you, was get me your questions by, I don't remember what I said your deadline was, but you're going to get me your questions, and staff can get me the questions, and that will give me a chance to then package them up, put them in buckets, package them up, and get them off to the developers on Monday. I really want to get that out to them as soon as possible. So this then leads to a question, which is, do you want to have another meeting? Because right now you're only currently scheduled to meet again on the 18th, once you have the financial analysis and after the community, actually I should add that in here, March 13th, nope, 12th is the community input session at the high school. So, you know, it'll be next meeting in the subcommittee will be after that. So I'm just suggesting, if you wanted to, do you want to have another meeting next week?
I think we probably need one. Yeah. What do people think? I mean, can you, Adrian and Ben, can you make that meeting?
Yeah, I'm sure.
What day was it?
Well, Wednesday or Thursday have been the 2 days that we've had good luck with.
Fourth or
Let
fifth?
me take a look.
Yeah.
I could do Wednesday or Thursday. Thursday's better. But either way is fine.
Do you want to have another one on March 5th at 8?
That works for me. Ben, you too?
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, great.
All right, Evelyn, I will, could you go ahead and send that, put that notice out and get that set up?
Yes, absolutely.
Basically, we'll just say it's proposal discussion and community input session prep, because this may be a chance for other prep that you might want to do before that. Okay. Thank you. All right, so it's gonna be the 5th at 8 a.m., 8 to 9. Doesn't need to be a longer meeting, I don't think. All right, so that's good. Strike that. Let's go to the review process. So this gets back to Holly's question about how does the committee submit input and how do they get involved, and then we can talk about the other pieces, but that's a question for the subcommittee to discuss. I should clarify that we have already put out the input form. You probably heard that last night from Adrian, but the input form is out there, and the small working group had decided last week that the video that I'll be creating that'll go live tomorrow will then be asked of every committee to view the video first, and then each committee could decide to provide consolidated feedback from the committee itself, or depending on some of the committees, depending on their workload, we didn't want to constrict people, but individuals then would be encouraged to submit the input via the form. But I'm curious what everyone's thinking about this.
I mean, I have thoughts on it. For what it's worth, I'm just trying to think about like the work of this subcommittee and the fact that we're not the deciders, right? Like we're going to be the group that makes the recommendation to the full council based upon like all the input, our own judgment, right? All of those kinds of things. And so in thinking about what does that look like, we'll be preparing a decision memo for the full council, I would assume, right? And to my mind, I think it would be really helpful. Certainly like individual committee members, if they want to submit an input form as just like an individual resident of Montpelier or committee member, I think that's great. And I would encourage them to do that. But I do think it would be really valuable, and kind of Holly, I'm thinking of you folks and of others, of committees that feel that have a really important role to play in helping us think about this selection. if there could be some kind of consolidated feedback from a committee, I hate to say it, but like a memo that outlines the pluses and minuses of each um, or questions that they have about each development. And then that came to the subcommittee. And in that way, it just becomes a lot more manageable to kind of synthesize and articulate the kind of pluses and minuses of all the applications and allow us to weigh things in a kind of judicious way and then create our own kind of decision memo for the council. So that's a long way of saying I would really love to see consolidated feedback from each of the committees, in addition to any kind of individual participant feedback that they want to provide, either through the public session or through the input form.
And I assume that wouldn't have to happen through the input form. Is that what or
Yeah,
you're
I'm
saying
assuming
it
that we
does,
would.
it should?
What I would love to, what I would love to see, no, what I would love to see is an actual Word document, a memo created by each
Yeah.
committee or consolidated in some way that comes to us. That's a public document, right?
Yeah.
That people can see. And then frankly, we could reference in our own decision memo to council.
Well, part of the rationale behind the input memo, I take it, is to make sure we don't miss anything, that it all goes to a single location that will be, regularly checked. But
Sure.
a Word document would be something that would be emailed to the committee?
I mean, I don't know the logistics, but yeah, that's what I'm assuming, that like you would have a committee, right? Like let's just, for example, Complete Streets Committee, they come to consensus on what they believe about the different proposals. They create a memo that's addressed probably to you, Sal, as chair of the committee.
Yeah.
And again, it's a public document that everybody can see, but that is something that we can use to reference as we make our deliberation.
Well, I mean, I hope people use the input form, but I'm on the alert I expect to get a lot of email from folks, directly bypassing the input memo, just something that I feel certain will happen. So
I've just popped this in. This was the list we came up with in 2 meetings ago, or our last subcommittee meeting, which were the committees or boards that had been previously kind of contacted, involved during especially the actual master plan process, and who may have input that would be valuable to you. So is there a communique that can go out to these folks to say, we would welcome your submittal as a committee, if you have time to discuss it and as a committee and provide us with a memo, we would welcome that specifically from this group. I don't know. I think there's more committees than just this, right, in the city.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard there's a lot. I don't know that I've seen the list. So I was just targeting these as the ones that you may specifically be asking for a memo from. Whereas then the other committees are all being asked to watch the video and submit input.
I talked with Alec last night, and the rec board and the Parks Commission are already conferring with each other and plan to submit a commentary. Holly, what's your take on what we've been talking about?
Yeah, I think
how possible is it for your committee to do that?
highly possible.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to us.
Sure.
We're happy to respect. You all can also ask for all of us to submit through the portal to save Sal's inbox. I don't know I don't know if the format of the portal allows for upload of documents. That's the question, Stephanie.
I have a feeling it doesn't, but
that's an Evelyn question.
Oh, sorry.
It's correct. It does not allow for upload of documents.
Yeah.
Great. Yes. So we are prepared and will submit a memo with our considerations and recommendations to this subcommittee.
Great.
Thank you.
We also will likely, as individuals, be participating in the other formats available.
Sure. Of course.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, I welcome that. I mean, I think if you have time to do both, that would be ideal.
Mm-hmm.
I think we might want to add at the very least the homelessness committee to that group. And Adrian, I believe you're reaching out to the school board.
Yes, my plan is to go to their meeting and just do a presentation during open comment.
Okay. Matt, go ahead.
Thanks, Sal. I'm the staff liaison with both homelessness and housing committees, and I will work with them to come up with the memo. I'm wondering if we could use the format of the online questionnaire and then just have it responded to as a committee. Does that make sense? Yeah, in the form of a memo, but answer the questions.
Yeah, there were specific questions within the input form. We generated very specific questions to get at what would be the most useful for the subcommittee as they think about it. So the suggestion could be follow that format, but with more, I would imagine a committee is going to have more robust, might have more robust answers. So more freedom to do that in a memo, but generally make sure that those questions have been covered.
Right. Yeah, at a minimum, cover those questions, but then free form for the rest of the document. Yeah. And then you're saying, Matt, that you would then email that directly to the...
We'll be meeting, the housing committee is meeting the first Tuesday with Ben and others. So
Okay.
we'll be able to have a conversation then. And then the homelessness committee is meeting next Wednesday. So I'll be able to talk to them at that point about coming together to come up with a response.
So is there some communication that needs to happen to them in advance, starting today, tomorrow, to encourage them to get their review of the proposals done? Because the video is going to be mildly useful for them in that if they're coming up with their comments in the meeting itself. So do we need to prompt them to make sure they've reviewed it beforehand and what the expectation is on the other end and who's in charge of that?
The chair of the housing committee, Alyssa Shurin, is on top of it. I'll reach out to Zach to make sure he is as well.
Just to really clarify this, though, I do think that we're going to have a concern here just around timeline and logistics of like warned meetings, and drafting a memo takes time. And so I do think if we could create a common communication for all the committees that says, you can provide individual input if you'd like, but we're asking for, we'd also welcome a memo that gives consensus of your committee. But again, just thinking about that, if they watch the video in advance, they go into the meeting, they have a robust conversation about what they think, then somebody has to draft the memo, then they have to review the memo and approve the memo, right? So that like takes time, and I'm not sure how that lines up with our timeline. I think we could probably make it work. I just think we need to front load expectations around that timing sooner rather than later so that they can plan accordingly. Because like if the housing committee is meeting like the first Tuesday of every month and they have to, that's not going to work if they have to have a multi-step process for creating and reviewing a memo.
Well, the memo doesn't have to be Wuthering Heights. I mean, it can be an outline.
Sal. Such a great book, but yeah.
Maybe that's the name we should call the development now. Maybe instead of Country Club Road, it should be Wuthering Heights.
Heathcliff Place.
No, I take your point, though, Ben. It's an important consideration, and I think we should make it clear to the committees that we need highlights, we need bullet points, and concerns in an outline form would be acceptable, and we can follow up with conversations if we need to. Stephanie, you look like you're on the verge of saying something.
I'm always on the verge of saying something, Sal. You know me. The thinking of timing, community input, community feedback, kind of targeting the March 13 kind of deadline when community input, when that form closes, then you're in the process of deliberations, interviews, etc. So it would seem to me that you'd want to have it by March 16th in order to make informed decisions on your questions with the developers and so forth. However, that said, you're going to begin more deliberations on April 9th. So, if you want to give them a timeline, a deadline, I think you could just explain the timeline and then they can decide when they submit the memo.
Well, I was going to say, I think maybe give them, encourage earlier, but let them know that, there's another opportunity. Although I am wondering about I imagine questions will arise that will not be included in your Monday message to the developers. And
Yeah.
I assume we'll have an opportunity if
Yeah.
to go back and forth. Okay, great.
Um,
So am I drafting that memo, it sounds like, to
the message to the
the committees to send out what
somebody
we're,
has to. Sure.
yeah, that's fine. I
You.
can, I, I can draft that today.
I think Evelyn would be grateful because
And
otherwise it's Evelyn.
yeah,
I think so.
yeah. And then Evelyn, I may need help in getting that out to everybody. I'm not sure I have a way to distribute that efficiently.
Absolutely. I have a list of committee chairs and their contact info. So either
Okay.
I can send that to you and you can pass that along, or I'm happy to pass that along as well.
Okay, great. I'll send you a note about that. Yeah.
Sounds
All right.
great.
I will send you these notes afterwards, Sal, so you have these notes on your
Great.
all right.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right. So great. That feels good. All right. So then I kind of moved around our little discussion timeline here because of a couple more topical points. But so we have the financial analysis is being done. He's kind of still in his initial extrapolation and digestion period. And so he'll get us some questions as well that we'll be sending to the developers. And that he is targeting still the March 13th deadline to get you his findings. That is very subject to availability of data. So if there are pieces that haven't come back from developers, there may be a block to what he can provide. But we're going back and forth with him. We're in constant communication so that he's not just in a bubble trying to do this without talking to us. So if you have further questions for him in particular or something you really want him to drill down into, let me know. Mike and I are kind of co-liaisons to him. There doesn't have to be a formal piece of this. He's part of the team. So, but if you have questions for him that like you want him to look at a very specific metric, let us know sooner than later.
And briefly, just for the record in bullet form, what's he pursuing with each proposal?
Yep, he's really looking at realistic feasibility of these development plans. If this feels like it's within the realm of the possible, and looking at the general aptitude of the developer in how they're approaching this. I would say it's not as deep as where we're drawing a line is that he is not doing a deep dive on the credentials and the financial backing, like deep into their bank accounts yet. That's something that will happen during the development agreement due diligence phase that we always do, every town does when they're forming a partnership. But these companies have come to us with enough credibility on the face of it that it doesn't beget us doing that deeper dive at this stage.
So capacity and
expertise and experience. Yeah. But financial capacity, that will be the question when we get a little bit further down the road. But the first piece of financial capacity is, what are their sources and uses? Are they realistic? What are the projections for rentals and ownership? What are the projections for the sales of these? And are they realistic? If someone came in and said they were doing 300 units next year, that would send up a red flag, for example. And so he's taking a hard look at those things. He's not looking, I want to make a clarification. Sorry, he is not looking at operating pro formas. There are no operating pro formas in this per se. So he is not looking at how these things operate as functional rental buildings. That was not within his scope. That's not something that the city would look at. So I'm just making that clarification.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, great. No, thanks. Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, sorry. Stephanie, who's going to be doing a financial analysis on the taxable value and like the potential increment that could cash flow the infrastructure required for the project?
Yeah, that's a combination of staff and Whitenberg. So that's going to be, we're going to have staff help us and, utilize DPW and such to help us come up with, impact of certain factors of development on your grand list, on your water sewer fund, et cetera, things like that. And then Brian and I will work on the chip analysis to the extent we can with the data we have.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we talked about the 3 buckets of questions. So when you get me your questions, which again, I've already forgotten what I told you was your deadline. I've emailed so many in the last few days, I'm totally forgetting.
Today at noon.
Is it today at noon?
I thought so. Yeah.
Fabulous. If it's not, you've just totally given everybody,
Yeah.
that's hard deadline. So, okay, great. Yeah, so no later than, oh, actually, no, that's not true. So questions for developers, you don't need to get them to me until 9 a.m. Monday.
Monday, yeah.
I know.
There you go.
I got to give you more time than that, Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah, 9 a.m. Monday for questions that get sent to them so that by midday I can send those off. There was something by today at noon. That's the video comments. That's what I need. Video comments by today. Thank you. All right. So let's go into the video because, or no, sorry, let's go into the community input session. So Adrian laid that out so well. That presentation looked awesome. I don't know, how did it go last night at City Council? Do you want to talk about it?
Great.
Pretty well received, yeah. Lots of energy.
Awesome. Awesome. Great.
It was a great job. That was an excellent presentation.
Cool. That's great to hear. So so then the question is, the only question I had, because it's otherwise pretty well laid out, I think, unless Sal or Ben, you had any questions about how it's supposed to run, it seems pretty straightforward. Video at the beginning, that part will be through Orca, and then 4 corners, 1 for each presentation for proposal, big board with the, some of the visuals, Post-its for collecting feedback, but big QR codes everywhere to send people to the input form, because the goal of the input form is to keep things aggregating in a uniform way that makes it more cohesive for processing and analysis on your side.
So there isn't a presentation at each of the 4 corners. It's just a place where people can ask questions, look at in more detail at a specific proposal. Okay.
So that's where I get to this question of facilitation, which is, it's not a presentation from the developers themselves. We had all said that wasn't appropriate. That's not what we want to do. This is going to be, there will be interviews with those developers by the subcommittee in a few weeks to ask more questions and let them fully flesh out other pieces, but their proposals are speaking for themselves. And so then each corner will have a facilitator, which is somebody who's going to be able to answer some questions. There may be questions they can't answer, that they're not the developer themselves. They're just there to answer clarifying questions that folks may have in interpretation. We're assuming people are going to attend who've never seen a site plan, who've never seen a development plan, don't understand how the sequencing goes, or what are the expectations of, how you build multifamily versus townhomes, things like that. So we're providing this opportunity for people to ask the clarifying questions so that they can submit public feedback that has, some that they have their full understanding. So we've designated staff and Brian because this will be after I go on leave, to be one of, experts as much as you can be on each of these proposals, and each get a different spot around the room, but we need a 4th. And the key about this 4th person is that all 4 people have to have read the proposal really well and understand enough to be able to answer some clarifying questions. But so I hesitate to ask anyone to do this who's kind of a good facilitator but not well versed in this. We had said it would be, ideal to have Ben, Sal, and Adrian walking around the room, to be listening more, to be the ones just hearing everything for themselves. But it's possible that one of you wants to volunteer to be that 4th and specialize on one of them and listen and take those. And we're all encouraging that each of the 4 keeps a recording at the station to listen, and then we can upload that to a program to pull out the salient points and do some note taking, so that you're not responsible for note taking everything that's said, because we're hoping we're going to collect some good questions out of this.
That sounds like a technology issue. How do we do that?
Everybody has, if you have a cell phone, you do a note, a record voice
Oh,
note,
hmm,
and then we upload the audio file and it generates from there.
hmm. Sounds like a big file though. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, okay.
I'm not saying it's fun. I'm saying it is possible, but I've done it and it is,
Well, I know, I just don't want to, lose it because go ahead, Matt.
yeah.
Um, I'm speaking out of turn. If we could identify the fourth person, there are a few people on staff who would have the technical expertise to be able to interpret the floor plans, right? They're not lots of us. So it could be Chris Lumbra, it could be Meredith or Michelle. Mike,
Yeah.
do you have?
Holly, go ahead.
This is the evening of the 12th, right? March 12th
Yeah.
at the high school.
Yeah.
I would offer that I am a professional community engagement facilitator, and I would be happy to run one of these corners. I would do it understanding that it's not my job or position to speak on behalf of the proposals, but to be an objective facilitator, taking notes and helping the community ask questions. Putting it out there that there's others in the community too that might be able to do that. But if you can solicit from the professionals among the community who are reliable to do a good job, just putting it out there. I don't feel overwhelmed by the technology, the note taking, or anything that's been said before. Others may see a conflict.
That's what I'm wondering. I don't really. I mean,
Hey, Sal, can I just interject an observation, Steve Whitaker?
Quickly, Steve.
If a city staff person is doing that, that creates a potential perception of bias towards one developer or another. So I think if finding the appropriate volunteer who's not a city staffer might be important.
Yeah, Kelly. Hi. Go ahead.
I'll commit to finding a fourth for us. We'll figure it out. We'll find an additional person internally on staff. I disagree with Steve. I think staff is a neutral body here where we're going to be presenting options, or working with council on their options. And so we'll sort that out.
Thank you.
I would just quickly say, like, I agree with that approach, Holly. That's a really generous offer, and I have absolutely no doubt that you're an excellent public facilitator. I just do think that it's actually a staff responsibility that it makes most sense for a July with staff.
My other question.
And I failed to just say hello and introduce myself. This is my first meeting. I'm the new city manager. Nice to see you all. And
I could have put you on the spot earlier. I'm sorry.
I broke the coffee pot, so I had to run off and clean that up. I wasn't here quite at the beginning, but nice to see you all. Thank you for having me. Committed to making this an excellent process for the community, and we'll find that fourth facilitator.
Okay, well, thank you, Holly. I think it was a generous offer. Let's see what Kelly can come up with, and
there was a little bit of thought during that small group meeting, just to give a little more background, which was that we're trying to make the facilitators keep consistent with the process that's been happening, which is that this staff and subcommittee have been working together with the consultant, us, to do all of the kind of dirty work, the digging and the reading through and the going through and the culling through. And so, we're already in the weeds reading all of it, having that information and then being able to be a steward within that. It just is unfortunate that I'm heading out on leave at the wrong time, because that would be the obvious, right balance anyway.
Holly, go ahead.
Just briefly, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the gentleman from Montpelier Planning Department who's up there, who is representing Homeless Task Force. Yes, but I heard an expression of interest to also participate with the right tools. And so I would just ask that you have these wonderful active committees that you are looking for input from, and it might behoove you to ask that a representative of these also participate at each one of the corners. So just saying, I'm gonna be there regardless, and I understand your process. Kelly, welcome. Not sure who you're gonna dig up to do this, but just saying where you land, don't forget that you heard from two folks here that seemed interested to participate.
Well, that's also really helpful, Holly, because one of the things, and Matt is the planning department, and he's one of the designated facilitators. However, one thing that was mentioned in our discussion was there's kind of two roles of a good facilitator, and Holly, it sounds like you've been trained in this, which is the listening, the stewarding, and the recording piece, and that was harder when we didn't have as much technology. Usually, it required two bodies. Sometimes now you can do it using tools. But I wonder if it would be beneficial. So I'll leave this. I think this is a great Kelly and Evelyn and Matt and Mike job to kind of come up with the infrastructure here, but to have somebody who's kind of the person actively discussing and someone who's kind of backing up with either recording, but also maybe taking notes as well to kind of corroborate the audio file. So just because Holly, I hear you that there's probably you plus maybe three others within the committees that might have some tech support / facilitation support that could be helpful. So, but now we've given Kelly, well, she's given herself a job, so that's great. The only other thing I was going to mention about this is the timing, Sal. So the community input session, we had this timeline. I'm going to scroll down to this timeline. We had kind of I mean, as much as we ever would close community input, like you said, you're gonna get people reaching out up till and through the decision from the city council.
And I've been telling people that that's inevitable and it's okay.
It is, but
shoot for earlier, yeah.
They shoot for earlier so that you're making your educated decisions and having educated conversations based on that community input. So what I'm saying is what we had originally said was the March 13th. That's the date that the input form closes. However, that was really kind of a bookending to that Friday. However, that was before we scheduled the input session. Is there a benefit to just extending that to the morning of March 16th? Give through the weekend so that folks could, if they participated Thursday night, get the input to the committee by Monday morning instead of Friday morning.
Yeah, that's probably a reasonable idea, and we can then use that date at the meeting itself so that people know they have the extra time. How are we actually? I mean, we're going to have recording, right? But if people want to write something down, are we sending them to the input form? I know we're going to have a QR code and so on. Are there ways to capture stuff that actually happens at the event? Or in other words, we're asking people to, I guess my sense is I don't want to force people into going home and doing something. I'd like to, if they've got something they want to record at the moment, we ought to have a way to capture that.
Adrian recommended having Post-its there and that people could write it down in the moment and add it to the wall. And then between the 12th and the 16th, the task of staff and subcommittee is to, and there may be an AI tool to use to be able to do this. She said she's done this before, but capture all the written comments and consolidate them. We did that too at the actionable planning process. So just take that. So yeah, so we don't force people also so that it's about access and equity. People don't have to have a computer to be able to participate.
Yeah, okay.
Looks like Holly has a question, Sal.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Holly.
Not a question, just the comment. Others in this group are also professional facilitators. You have to give people coaching on what to write down, because if they write a Post-it note that says farmers market versus I think we should expand our farmers market, those are two very different ideas being generated, and whoever transcribes it afterwards, regardless, won't have any idea what the person meant by their Post-it note if they're not given coaching and or assistance to write it down. And also just thinking about any kind of accommodations for folks with disabilities. I've certainly been in rooms where people don't have fingers to write with. So there also should be someone being willing to transcribe.
So that's leading me to my next idea, which was this group, Adrian's kind of been leading this, doing the small group work in advance of the 12th. The team of facilitators and or support should maybe find a time to do some more prep, just to get some consistency around what is and isn't said, what kind of questions you are and aren't answering, and how to help people participate. So when Kelly finds that 4th, I think that should be scheduled afterwards. So I'll stay on that.
Yeah, those are all great points. Thank you, Holly. Go ahead, Mike.
You're on mute.
Sorry. So my computer's been having issues and my headset went, and so hopefully you guys can hear me.
Yeah, you're good.
Yes.
All right. So on a slightly different topic, about the logistics of the meeting for that night, I can expect that we're going to have folks for at least one of the projects to be present. And I don't know if we want to have a conversation about the message or how we want to talk with them about this, whether it's okay or not okay. We want to give the public an opportunity to freely give their opinions. And, will they want to criticize a project if the developer is standing right there? And there's certainly value to having them there, to being able to answer questions, but at the same time, the other developers probably aren't going to be here. And the answer can be whatever the committee wants, but we should have a conversation up front of, is it okay? Because I would expect there's going to be folks there to defend their proposal. And I don't know. I just see it could be a plus because they can answer questions. It could be a minus because people are not going to feel comfortable about being frank about, I really don't like that. And it's our job as the people there, the staff, to be able to just go through and say, okay, here's how we can do that. Here's how we can change that into a question, because really, are there questions that we should have answered that could help you understand this proposal more, as opposed to having somebody there who's answering it. And that was just my thought. I wanted to make sure that the committee has kind of thought through this so we have an idea of how we would communicate to the developer on this.
And I want to be clear, it was not in the RFP that we were doing this, and that this was an ad. And so we've never put it out as the expectation that these developers would be at this meeting and be required to participate with the public on this, because they know that they're going to be fielding questions from the subcommittee that came from the public. Like, that was the point, that was the process. So we got to think about equity in that too.
And did Adrian's group discuss this issue? It seems to me
Good question. No, I don't think so.
Either we invite all or we prohibit all. It just seems odd to have some representatives from a developer and not others, even if they're unofficial. What do people think?
I think, I'm open to other ideas, but it strikes me that it would be appropriate. I don't think you say you can't come to this, right? I think you say, yeah, you're welcome to come and listen to what the community has to say, but that we would ask that you be in listening mode, and just stick to that. That feels, I don't know. Although, Mike, I guess your point's well taken. Like, somebody might not want to criticize if they see somebody in the room. Yeah. I don't know, but I think the whole point of this thing is to listen to the community, right? Not to have the kind of back and forth, just to listen. So I don't know. I think at least setting that expectation, I think, would be important.
In the room it wouldn't concern me as much as actually standing at the table where we're taking the input on that. If they want it to be away from that input piece where we're taking the input from the public, and if somebody wanted to interact with them, they're welcome to. But I was just, like I said, I just wanted to make sure we had a safe space where people could ask questions and criticize or support or whatever. And we're there to absorb it without having a sense that it's like, well, I would have said this, but I didn't want to because I didn't want an argument or something like that.
Can we create like polling rules, like no, can't stand within a 5-foot perimeter of your own project, like at the polling places? just thinking that the same. Yeah, people are gonna censor themselves.
Well, I sort of worry about the developers who don't know that this meeting is happening and, they have no inkling that this is,
Right. We can tell them today and they can put it on their calendar, but they may not be available. We've never put this on a timeline that they would be.
well, and we would have to explain what our position is on their being there, that it's not an invitation to present. It's an invitation to be present and listen, but to not express opinions or explanations or in any way sort of influence. I mean, it's a tricky thing.
Mhm.
Well, let let's put it on the. Oh, did Matt just left? I guess I didn't get to read the whole note, but
Oh,
um.
no, Matt's still here.
Oh, he is still here. Okay.
Well, if we do need to tell, I mean, it doesn't, I should tell them, I'm gonna tell them anyway, because they should know it's happening. And
Yeah.
I made that official, and announced last night. So,
Well, let's keep it in mind, and maybe 10 minutes from now we'll have a better
okay.
better
All right,
sense
we'll
of what
circle
we
back
want to do.
to it.
Let's just keep moving, and I mean it's an open question that we need to address. Obviously, Holly, go ahead.
I think Sal that and Mike both have valid concerns about this, and I think this is an all or nothing in terms of equity. And even if you ask them to just be in listening mode, it is going to be very difficult for them to not want to react, to answer a question that they hear. And as soon as they get into answering or defending or explaining, they will be effectively in a sales mode.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be unrealistic to expect them to stay in listening mode only. Certainly, if they are a member of our community, they should be able to attend. But I don't know that any of them are. And it is a public meeting. You can't keep them away.
Yeah.
But if anyone is going to be present, you should let them all know sooner than later that this is happening.
So are you sorry, I just want your opinion on this. Do you think if we say no presentations, listening mode only, are we, yes, it's a public meeting. There are residents of Montpelier that are on these teams, so they're welcome to attend, but everyone's welcome to attend. Do you think we need to?
You need to coach your facilitators to know who these people are in the room. People need to be known who they are, and you'll need to coach all of your facilitators to keep those folks in that mode. So if they start to answer a question, let them know that they're not there to answer questions. That's part of the facilitation management too.
Well, that sort of makes sense that we can when we notify the developers that there will be the chances are there will be members from other teams there who are members of the public. What our policy is toward it. I mean, it's probably the best we can do.
Yeah. I don't know that we need to say that. I think we can just say, like, this is an open public meeting that people are welcome to attend. We're asking developers to be in listening mode, and facilitators will remind them of that role.
Mm-hmm. As long as they
Sure.
do need to identify themselves, because these teams are quite big. So
Right.
some people might have, be participating. So, yeah. Okay.
I also just going back to the facilitation of it, like really at the beginning of the meeting, right? Set that expectation as a common expectation in the room that like there might be members of the development teams here, but this is really about listening to the public and getting their input. It's not about, getting direct questions from developers. So there are other opportunities for that.
So they'll be clear that any developers who attend will need to be in listening mode and will be on the lookout for that. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. A little time check. We're coming up on 9 o'clock. We have till 9:30. I think we're going to have to acknowledge that the discussion of the actual proposals will be tabled until our next meeting. We knew that was a possibility when we set out this initial agenda, because we need to discuss the video that's going to get created today and the scoring matrix. So I think that's going to probably consume the majority of our time.
Just to back up the truck for a minute, Stephanie, you will handle that communication with the developers about
Yes.
what we just discussed? Okay.
Yes, and I'll probably run it by some folks here before I send something out officially. Staff and so forth.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
So, is that okay with folks that we blaze forward with these two things? They seem the more time sensitive. Okay. All right, so video discussion. So what I'm proposing, I sent you all the thoughts on this video and my talking points. I think I'll just share my screen on that and asked for feedback on that by noon today because I'm going to film it likely this afternoon. So here I'm going to walk through it and then you all can tell me what you think. But my context, the point of the video is to be objective. This is not any commentary or analysis on behalf of the city. This is orientation. The main point is orientation to get folks to understand what they're looking at when they open the files and then get them to the input form. So I'm going to hit highlights and then and orientation of the project and then set them off to the proposals, the links, and the QR code. So the call to action, I like to start with a call to action and the orientation here. Watch the video, review the proposals, provide the input. If you have clarifying questions you need questions clarifying things to go to the input session. And then to launch into this project, give them the overall background context that, it was acquired in 2022, completed action plan in 23, and then the RFP went out with the intent to select a developer to build housing here. Remind folks that this is still the intent of the city to have rec and housing here. So try to explain the process a little more. This is a little bit of education here because we do feel strongly that folks are coming into this sometimes cold. They want to be engaged, but they've never done a development project. So explain the idea of what happens in a public-private partnership, how the vetting happens throughout the negotiation, but nothing happens till there's a signed development agreement. There's off-ramps for the city at various times within the process, as well as after the development agreement is signed. Then the next steps will be the city and the developer both doing their planning because there's infrastructure planning and there's development planning, securing financing and funding. And so construction could begin, and this is a level set around the expectations of timing. Some folks might be thinking, why is there not housing there yet? And some folks might be thinking, we're not going to see it there for 10 years. So kind of saying that construction could begin as soon as next year or the following year, and it'll depend on the scope, and build out could be as short or as long as 5 to 8 years. So focus and really hit home that the goal is to be increasing housing supply here. That was what was identified in the actionable plan, that the community process, that's what's been identified as the goal. I guess I'll stop there and say any comments or questions on these first two sections. Does that sound like an appropriate intro?
I would just say that where you're talking about call to action, I mean, great to send people to the public meeting, but if they can't do that, just highlight other ways that they can comment.
Yeah.
And then I think the more examples you can use, brief as they are, like what an off-ramp might be, just so people get the idea of what the kind of thing you're talking about. Not in great detail, but just something that they can latch onto.
Yep. Got it. Yeah, the word contingency comes up a lot, and I'll try to debunk that a little. Okay. All right, and then it's a little bit more about the RFP process, how this is a city council decision, but that the city council subcommittee has been in charge of stewarding the process and doing the due diligence and recommending that we received the 4 proposals, that there's confidential information, and that really focusing on what the factors are for the subcommittee to be considering, not only the input from the proposals you've read, the interviews you'll have, the financial analyst's opinion, the public opinion, the committee inputs. I'm going to actually put that in here too, now that we have that formalized. Those are all factors, and I want people to know that they're all being kind of put into the pot for you to consider. and that this is not going to be a city vote, a public vote for which proposal that is going to be selected. This is a subcommittee decision. So the input form sending, I'm just coming back to the input form over and over again, because I really want folks to know that's how to get the data to, their input back to the city. And then we're going to change that. And then just that process again, just really hitting home the process about when they could expect to see some of that. Sound okay about that update or overview? Okay.
The interviews with developers are private interviews? Are they public? I mean, how does that work?
They're within this subcommittee, so they'd be in this
They'd
format
be in the
that we're
meeting,
doing right
yeah.
now. And if
Okay.
you need to go into executive session for specifics, you can do that. But yes, they're
Okay, so they'll
visible
have,
to
yeah,
the public. They're public meetings, but
yeah.
specific periods for public comment. But the intent is not to have public Q&A with the developers. The intent is for them to get their questions to subcommittee to decide which questions to use in those interviews. Okay. So then it gets into the proposals, and I think by this point I've left myself like 5 minutes to do all of this, because it is a 10-minute. We don't want to make this longer than 10 minutes. And Adrian raised the point, like, are you sure you can do all this in 10 minutes? And no, I don't have any idea if I can or not. I have rehearsed it a few times and gotten close, but I'm looking to your expertise in this next section about what to and not to include in the individual proposals. But the overview of proposals, essentially, I was just going to hit kind of broad strokes what these four entail, so folks know that to expect that there's a lot of variety between them, and that we see that, so that they're not expecting to see four very similar proposals. And I want to be very clear that from our interpretation, there's been a lot of care and time and effort put into these proposals, and that folks need to understand that these teams do this completely speculatively and put a lot of time and energy into this. And so they care a lot about this, and they see the goals and the needs. Every team has delivered on that, in my opinion. Now, that is an opinion, so I'm willing to take that out if you think that's too subjective, but
No, I think that's important. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just a sentence. So yeah.
So Stephanie, are you in this when you're talking about this each development each proposal, you'll have sort of a visual on there. You'll have a list or a graph or a table of.
Yep, my thinking was to do a slide for each with just the bullet points that I'm going through here. And then I have a point about the visuals, the layout that I want to get to in a minute. But
I was just wondering, in thinking about preparing those, can those then be collected in a document that's downloadable for people who have access that way, and that would be printable, and if people wanted to pick one up? I mean, you'll have it. It's just a matter of putting it into a.
Yeah, I mean, what we're going to
format.
hear with this, I mean, what we could do is just make the slide deck downloadable, and each slide,
Okay.
that has the bullet points on it is fine. I will say the issue with doing this is that we are summarizing the proposals. We're not having developers vet that and review that. This is what we've interpreted from what they've proposed. So it's pretty clear that Chinburg put in 316 for their total units. It's pretty clear from many of them that there's a certain amount of townhomes, single family, multifamily, like that. Those are pretty clear statements. I'm not too worried about most of these. Some proposals there's inconsistency among the proposals to be able to discern even this differentiation, to have specific quantities of those breakouts. So each proposal is actually going to be slightly different, have different metrics that I'm bringing out, or highlights, bullets I'm bringing out, because not all of them have that readily available. So yes, I can make the bullet points available to them, but ultimately they should be going to the proposals themselves to read that data for themselves. Like, this is really only intended as orientation, not as okay, I know everything I need to know about the proposals from this video. And maybe I need to make that very clear at the beginning too. Orientation only. not full review, something like that.
Well, I'm just thinking the proposals are dense and not
They are.
readily accessible. And if we're providing a summary, I think some people are going to say, "Oh, great, there's a
know.
short form."
Well,
So if we're going to do it, um, is it better to give them a glimpse of it and never let them see it again, or have to review the whole video, or give
no,
them
I mean,
the slide deck? And
I'm not opposed to doing the slide deck
yeah,
as a separate doc, but I just,
a disclaimer.
yeah, this is the balance, because I do worry that we're trying to summarize this because we do want folks to have accessibility, and these people haven't read something like this ever in their life, so trying to
Yeah.
give them some orientation. But at the same time, we take the risk that we're doing interpretation and they need to do their own research. Like, it's not, yes, they're dense, but that's what it is. I'm afraid to do anything further.
Well,
I
we should probably include that disclaimer for certain. Go ahead, Ben.
I think we really need to be, this has to be an invitation for people to find out more information on their own. If they're really serious about providing, quality input, they're gonna read the proposals, right? I think that this is an invitation and an orientation, as Stephanie said.
Okay.
You're a real optimist, Ben.
Well, but I think it's important for people to know the differences too. I think that's part of it is to know what to look for. Like owner occupied versus rental, you might look at the different pictures and say, oh, I like the way that looks. I like this. Is when you see this, you're like, oh, okay, there's actually a difference between, they could look the same or similar, and one could be all rental and one could be all owner occupied, or a mix. And if you've never done this before, you don't even know to look for that. You don't even know it's a thing to look for. So this, I think, at least helps people start to think about, oh, that's right. Do I care whether it's owner or rental? Do I care whether it's multifamily or single family? So I think it's helpful to get them jog and make them think. But
Well, yeah, and I agree, and there's certainly, they should go and do their own research. I'm just trying to be realistic that I think many folks will not. Go ahead, Adrian.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Ben and Mike. I think the video in my mind was just not going through each proposal and providing an overview, but more of a guide and a, instruction, or even like a dictionary, because we have to think our audience as kindergartners here. They don't know this language. They don't know what to look for. And even just like a little tour of what a proposal is, and even just describing like the beginning of each proposal is a background of each developer, like we talked about last night, and it shows what they've worked on and their history and the staff that are part of that company, and then what the proposal looks like, maybe just some very high level guidance for people to look at. But I think what the direction should be consistently is for people to go look at the proposals themselves. But really the video should just be like a roadmap of how to look at proposals, because when I looked at them for the first time, it was very overwhelming to me. And I still don't know exactly what, where I need to focus my time and energy, and what those terms mean in terms of, from a written document to practice.
Yeah, no, I kind of like this idea, but it's a very different video.
I support that very different video for what.
Yeah, no, I like the idea. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna, I don't know if this is a different idea or maybe a complementary idea. Maybe proposing the types of questions one might ask, like leading questions. Like, if you're interested in whether there's rental or ownership models, you should look for that. Like, give them examples of the types of questions that they want to have when they start to read, like have in advance. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think the more, in this type of video, you would use examples like that to direct people, what to look for and where to, how to find it.
Okay, that is super helpful. Oh, Brian has something. Go ahead, Brian.
I think the good analogy is this is supposed to be more of a trailer for the movie, not the Cliff Notes for the book. So it's supposed to get you in and give you enough interest and information to go further. But if this level of detail, I think if we had to do this for all 4 proposals, Stephanie, which I really appreciate and think will be needed at some point, but in the video, I think we're going to lose folks doing
Well,
that.
and I'm not sure that we are needing that in the future. So I'm
Okay.
very pro striking this, because I do find it, I was struggling with this part because I think the specs of it, they're not all created equal. Like they have different, they've all provide, and at this stage, we haven't asked them for follow-up materials to clarify some of these, and we don't want to get it wrong. And I don't want to be the spokesperson for any of these proposals. So I'd much prefer to take this out. I love this idea, Adrian, of doing it as education instead, yeah, kind of a primer. And if they, it's up to them to do their independent research. I don't know that we'll ever have a comparative document that shows the different, how many units and everything. People can do their own independent research. Ultimately, if that's something the subcommittee needs, because the subcommittee is the one making the recommendation, then, we'll provide that. But ultimately, that's, it is on the proposal of the public to review the proposals if they want it. So I agree. Let me do another one. This was
Yeah, no, good discussion. I think we reached consensus on that through the discussion. I mean,
thrilled.
amazingly, it actually worked. Yeah.
I think what I'll try to do is bring it back to this. The reason I plopped this in here is these are the criteria for review.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to show, is that that's why these materials were included, right? So people need to understand that that's why these materials were provided. And then I like this idea of terminology, a glossary almost. Formatting doesn't like me right now. But like a glossary or terminology, things we're looking for, that kind of thing. Type of questions to look for, like Matt said. So I can run with that. That I think, and I do think that's doable in 10 minutes. I was just nervous about all of these specs being too specific. I hadn't gotten to all the other ones yet. So, and then the last one, well, so the last point though was a question around design. So Matt had offered, and we're going to work together on this, which is, well, he's already worked on it, which is to show the layout so that folks know what the layout looks like compared to the master plan from 2025, the April 2025 layout plan. And so to do kind of one slide is the city's plan, and then the next slide fades in and shows you what they're proposing, so that you can kind of see a variance between the two and what they chose to do. Because some developers chose to do a swap of recreation area, for example. We had said a swap would be okay, we'll think about it, we'll take it into consideration. So not speaking to it, just letting people see that and make sure they're looking at that comparison. And then the other, so if everyone's okay with that, I would just include that. That could be in the background. I'm a big fan of having slides run while I'm talking, kind of thing. So that might be how it's structured.
Definitely, I wonder on that. I think it sounds great. I don't know exactly what the wording would be, but I do think it's important that, we proposed this this is the site, that we came up with as the subcommittee. Clearly, some people deviated from that, but I also think it's important to acknowledge the language that was in, the RFP of like, that we would consider other, you know what I mean? That it's not like it's completely off the table. It's, we came up with, this is what we think it should be. And if they propose something different, I just think we need to provide the nuance there of like, there was an opening in the RFP for them to come up with innovative ideas or propose something different.
And that there's back and forth. I mean, we need to, I think, emphasize that we can go back and forth with them about what their proposal shows and what our goals are for the project. I was also thinking, I mean, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about things like, when you're talking about schedule, as something to consider, we ought to talk about why it matters.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, there's a difference in the schedules that are proposed, and people probably don't know how to evaluate that. Like, why does it make a difference that somebody's going to finish in 2034 and somebody in 32? Why does that matter? Wherever we can explain to folks why it makes, why it matters, that will help.
Mhm. Got it. The last question is about verticals. So there's a lot of renderings in the packets. Do we include those? I don't think so, because I don't think I mean, unless they do one per group and put just a slide with, all four, each of them as representative as a placeholder while I'm talking. I just don't want to speak to any renderings. That's not my job in this video, as we've clarified.
Yeah, I mean, I worry about renderings because they're, visuals make a very strong impression, and they don't always tell the whole story. But
From the education, that could be what I say, is I could have the renderings up there and say, also remember that renderings are imperfect. People need to understand that this is not a snapshot of what it will look like, even if they like it or they don't like it. Right? Matt, maybe you can help me with that, like a little bit of language around education about what renderings, how to view renderings. Okay. So maybe it's not a speak to it, but talk about why. Again, talk about why, like education. All right. Great. Awesome. That helped a lot. Okay.
I think that goes hand in hand with the site plans though, because the renderings, the aerial views show one thing, but the ones that are at pedestrian level show kind of the public space that the site plans create. And I think that's, that's a public amenity that needs to be discussed. And I can help you come up with language to talk about how it's the space between buildings that people are really going to experience, and how that's something to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. But also something to pay attention to more as the design is refined and with final design.
Well, yeah, I mean, these proposals, as we all know, are sales documents. So they're designed to put a particular proposal in the best light. So we need to keep that in mind. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we can also just go through and say, I mean, at this point, we've given them a lot of information in 10 minutes, and we can also go and say, well, within the packets, within each one of these, or other projects and some of the history, other work they've done. I mean, rather than trying to get into each piece, there's just so much in here. It may just be, we've just briefly covered, you may find this type of information, and kind of leave it at that. And
yeah, that makes sense. They've all included images in particular of past projects. So that's something that we can direct people to. Yeah, it's inevitable.
Yep. Okay, with our 11 minutes, let's get to the scoring matrix, and we may not get through it all. So let me share that. So I got feedback from all of you. I appreciate your contributions, and I have a couple of recommendations. So let me do a quick overview for anyone who is listening who hasn't seen something like this, which is that the criteria that were in the RFP are listed on the left. We give a weighting for that based on, what importance that holds within the broader scale of the project. And then in each column for each proposal, we go through each of those ideas, each of these qualifications, and add a number and rank it within the scale of how good or, best, the 5 being the best in this case. And then those total based on the weighting, and they give a percentage at up to 100. It could be up to 105 if you give a bonus. So that's the general approach. Now, so for example, I guess I should do an example here. So you could do 5, 3, 2, 4, 5.
While you're doing that, could I just ask what order are they in, any particular order? Why are the higher weightings not at the top? I mean, it just as a reminder that
Yep.
This is more important than something else.
We can reorganize it. This is in order that it showed up in the document in the RFP.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to reorganize it once we figure out the weightings, so that you can go from most important or most heavy to the least, if you'd like.
Well, I just think it's a prompt to remind remind us when we're evaluating. Yeah.
And then one of the things surmised from some of the feedback, let me open up some of my notes here, was to, sorry, I have them somewhere. Here it is. So, oh, let me say again, a reminder. So this follows the criteria from the RFP, and it's really this matrix is to be used in two different ways. One is along the way, and this is really only for the subcommittee. This is your document. This is your rubric. You're going to use this. You can use this as you go, as a note-taking piece, as you kind of start to feel out where you are along the three. And ultimately, we will consolidate the numbers to one and use that as our substantiation for the decision. But you can use it in both ways. And so you may not have, at this time, the confidence to assign a number on one of these until you get through the financial analysis, until you get through the interviews. So just keep that in mind, that this is not to be used today and never again. It's to be used along the way and then at the end to come up with your final numbers. One suggestion that was made was, could we separate out, because qualifications and experience might be two different things, for example. For example, a firm could be very qualified to do a project, but the team that they've assigned doesn't have the experience with a project of this scale. So you may want to weight those rank those slightly separately. That's probably even less of a good example than quality and responsiveness, or affordability and public benefit. They are like they're sisters, but they're not twins, right? So if you want, we could break them out. That's one option. Or as you're thinking about them, you're just coming up with a aggregated score. So that's your option there too. The other option we have, and these are the two questions I'm posing to you today, is to expand this from a 1 to 10, 5 to a 1 to 10, which is totally acceptable to do. It gives you a little more nuance in how you judge something and rank something, and it may be useful when you're specifically looking at things that are a little more complicated, like capacity and schedule, two different kind of seemingly similar but different criteria. Does that make sense? And what are your thoughts?
As you know, I like the separation for some of these.
I don't. I could live with it. I do like the idea of 1 to 10. Think that would be helpful. 5 feels pretty small. I guess the only other thing I want to say that I do think is related is, just as we go into this, just as we did with the last time we did something like this, is to remember that we're going to have different scores, right? We're going to have different internal interpretations of these categories, and that's okay. It's really about consistency among ourselves, right? So that I just think that that's really key. Like, Sal and Adrian might have different scores on partnership and approach for the DEW project, but as long as they're consistent and we're all consistent in the way in which we're evaluating each one, I think is the most important thing.
I actually need a little clarification on partnership approach. Are we talking about partnership with the city?
With the city, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was, let me see if I can find the language here. Evidence of a collaborative mindset and clear plan for working with the city and community. So there's, like I said, everything about this. I mean, financial feasibility, for example, has multiple components to it too. All of them have multiple components because, and if we made a list of individual components, we'd be, hundreds lines long. But now you've got Adrian.
Yeah, go ahead, Adrian. Sorry.
No, sorry. I'm just looking at this again, so thank you for going through that. Are we going to be ranking, or is there going to be any criteria around, I don't know what the word is, but the only thing that comes to my mind is like the design, right? Like, is there going to be any criteria around, I think the design and like how it fits into Montpelier's, I don't know, like.
Yeah, that's what we kind of.
I don't know what the word is.
Isn't that the responsiveness line?
That's the language might not be great, but the responsiveness of, so I would say, Adrian, let me reread you that criteria from the RFP, because for that quality responsiveness of development concept, it is alignment with city objectives for housing, affordability, design quality, and land use, creating a walkable, connected neighborhood. Thoughtful integration with existing transit and multimodal transportation, the recreation conservation context and trail network, and strategies for reducing potential vehicular trips and alleviating traffic flows at intersection 2 to accommodate the phased growth in number of housing. So that covers
Excellent.
kind of a lot of design. So yeah, that's where you would stick that. Now, I believe strongly that if there are any kind of creative solutions, like new innovative ideas that they've brought to the table, that you could include them either in this factors that seem deemed relevant or bonuses. You know, if they came up with something outstanding that you liked a lot, I would put it in as a bonus because it's something that stands out different than their peers. Personal opinion. But that's my well, actually it's not personal. That's my professional opinion on how to do this matrix, actually. That's where that goes. Okay, Adrian's a thumbs up. So I'm going to go ahead and reorganize these by the sequence just in this list and make it so that it goes by weight. No one seemed to have an issue with the weighting system. This followed closely the weighting we did during the RFP process. So that's why I think everyone had consensus around this. And then I'll switch it to a 1 to 10. But Sal, let's go back to your question of separating.
Well, I mean, I don't, we don't need to do it for everybody. I will probably separate them and then use my internal system to combine them and come up with a single number.
Okay. You can show me that math or not.
Yeah, I don't want to impose that whole structure on everybody. I just thought that there were some clear cases where we were talking about two different things.
I wonder,
Implementation capacity and schedule, I think, are two different things. Can we do a project this large is different from the schedule that we can do it in. So go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
Sorry, no, I get you, Sal. I wonder, and maybe this is just something that I'll do for myself, is like taking a look at this and adding actually some bullet points underneath each one of those, right? Like, we've got the criteria elaborated more in the RFP than we do here, right? And I think just putting that as a reminder where it's right there might help.
On the sheet, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely good idea. Yeah. Okay.
If I could just ask if the use of public resources is a positive measurement, or is it if you use very little public resources, you're getting a really big number there?
It's funny.
I don't know that it's clear in the way.
Look at Brian coming in here late to the project.
I know, but
it's a good question. I assume
we could have used months ago. Yeah.
I assume the fewer resources, the better.
Yeah, that's
right?
This is the sub bullet, right? So financial feasibility is the first bullet. The second bullet is efficient use of land, city land infrastructure contributions, and external grants and funding. We use efficient because I think, we don't want them. I think it's actually a good thing if you can leverage, city support for an application. That's utilizing public resources, without adding to any kind of burden. But and using CHIP is not a bad use of public resources. Right. So we said efficient, and that's going to be a judgment call by you as the subcommittee. Yeah. So maybe we could have used slightly different language, but that's where we landed. So I think that's fine.
I have to hop off, everybody. It's just wanted to give you a heads up.
Yeah. Thank you, Adrian.
Thanks, Adrian. Have a good vacation.
Thank you all for your time. I'll talk to you all next week.
Great.
Sounds good.
Bye. See ya.
So I think that actually is a good place to stop because I think we have a good revision to the scoring matrix. I'll circulate that in the next few days. I say next few days because there's obviously a lot of other stuff going on, so it's just going to take a minute. But I'll go ahead and circulate that, and then we'll go ahead and use that. You can use that whenever you want, and I think it's up to you, the rest of the team, about when you come back to that. If you want to just start using that before the meeting on the 9th of April, you come to your 9th of April meeting with your draft of what your numbers are. I might recommend that to Brian as a pre-step like we did last time, which is everyone sends him their completed draft scoring so that he can see how close people are or how far apart for the purposes of a constructive conversation.
So Stephanie, given that we redesigned the video, do you still need further input by noon, or do you feel like, I mean, we have a whole
Ideally
new,
not.
a whole new,
But if
yeah,
you
we have a
any
whole new
thoughts,
thing to comment on. So yeah,
if you
okay.
have any other thoughts before noon, let me know. That's
Yeah.
fine. But
Yeah.
ideally
Good.
no, because I'm gonna try to get this done today. So okay.
Okay. Great.
So it means that next week when I'm glad we've scheduled that other meeting.
Yeah, no, we absolutely need it.
Because that's going to be when we can start discussing the proposals. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
All right, great. I believe we are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
We are indeed. Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Take care. Bye.
Great day.